Welcome. Thank you for joining our Best Practice Series webinar. I'm Becky Melody, your hostess for today's presentation. Dirk Rodgers, author and CEO of Dirk Rodgers Consulting, Grant Hodgkins, USDM VP Commercial Practice, which includes the track and trace and serialization areas, along with Chris Chandler, VP USDM Healthcare Practice, will be presenting. The discussion today will cover introductions, webinar logistics, and our discussion topic, the FDA's Drug Supply Chain Security Act, what you need to know before January 1st, 2015. The content today will be covered in approximately 30 minutes, and then we'll invite you to post questions for the team via the message board on the lower left of your screen. Or you can join our discussion on LinkedIn, the USDM group, and post any questions there. Of course, we're happy to address questions offline as well. Just shoot us a note to usdm@usdm.com. As many of you know, the first deadline for the FDA Drug Supply Chain Security Act, or DSCSA, begins in 2015. This webinar is an opportunity to learn about the DSCSA law, recent guidance documents, and current industry efforts. These key resources will help you work with trading partners to develop your systems and processes to comply with the verification deadline of January 1st, 2015. This webinar will also help you plan for future implementation deadlines, such as the transaction documentation to dispensers by July 1st, 2015, and product serialization and traceability requirements over the next 10 years. The discussion will include today an overview of requirements for dispensers, i.e. pharmacies, wholesalers, manufacturers, and repackagers. Helping you to get ready, how recent FDA guidance documents affect your understanding and implementation. And then of course our QA session. USDM focuses exclusively on the life science domain. We're the market leader in providing quality and regulatory IT compliance professional service solutions. We're headquartered in Santa Barbara, California, and we've delivered more than 1,000 successful projects with over 300 life science clients. Our team provides medical device and pharmaceutical companies with business process, technology, and compliance solutions. And now, we're closing the gap to improve patient safety. We offer solutions and services to ensure the quality of medical device and pharmaceuticals to meet regulatory requirements while reducing costs. Our services span the entire healthcare spectrum, from healthcare providers to manufacturers and distributors. Our experts lead industry efforts to define and drive standards to achieve patient safety and supply chain goals. We specialize in improving business productivity through the implementation and adoption of new technologies that power business processes in the highly regulated healthcare industry. We're proud to be teaming with Dirk Rodgers Consulting, and their main goal helps clients to prepare to meet global serialization and track and trace regulations. The focus is on packaging line global serialization conversions, meaning and implications of regulations, strategies for applying global standards to meet global regulations, and solution vendor selection. Dirk's expertise includes operation of the modern pharma supply chain, manufacturers, repackagers, wholesalers, and pharmacies. The business models of brand generic virtual contract organizations, wholesale distribution, repackaging dispensers, and solution providers. The other focus is finding the least cost approach, which requires true understanding. I'm happy to introduce Chris Chandler. Chris focuses on helping healthcare providers develop supply chain solutions for medical devices and pharmaceuticals to meet regulatory compliance, including UDI and DSCSA requirements. Chris offers over 20 years experience as a pharmacist and implementing patient safety standards. Also very proud to have Grant leading the USDM team, our commercial track and trace and serialization practice. Grant has extensive experience in pharmaceutical track and trace, UDI, and enterprise solutions. Over the past 30 years, he's designed, implemented, and managed complex global programs and operations in manufacturing operations. He served on key industry action committees during the development of global track and trace. Dirk Rodgers, again, is a pharma supply chain thought leader. Dirk is a founder of the rxtrace.com, where he writes regularly about pharmaceutical supply chain, track and trace technology, standards, and regulatory compliance. Dirk has extensive experience in wholesale distribution IT, and he's the author of the Drug Supply Chain Security Act Explained. Very strong team presenting for you today. We appreciate you joining us. And with that, I'll turn the presentation over to Chris.
Thanks, Becky. We'll begin with the regulation. On November 27, 2013, President Obama signed the Drug Quality and Security Act, or DQSA legislation. Title I of this new law is the Compounding Quality Act. It will not be covered today. However, for awareness, this section removes certain provisions from the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act applicable to compounders nationwide. The new law adds that a compounder can become an outsourcing facility, able to qualify for exemptions from the FDA approval requirements, and the requirement to label products with adequate directions for use. But the exemption from not the exemption from GMP requirements, FDA inspection, reporting adverse events, or providing FDA with information on the products they compound. FDA anticipates state boards of pharmacy will continue their oversight and regulation of the practice of pharmacy, including both traditional pharmacy compounding and outsourcing facilities. Our topic today is Title II of DQSA, the Drug Supply Chain Security Act, or DSCSA. It's intended to protect consumers from exposure to counterfeit, stolen, contaminated, or otherwise harmful prescription drug products with an electronic interoperable system for traceability in the U.S. The most important takeaway for today is that the first compliance date is January 1st of 2015, so less than a month away. In contrast to the way the law was written on requirements by trading partner, we will today break down the law into 5 key areas of compliance. They're applicable to all trading partners, as a coordinated effort will be required for products to move through the supply chain and be available for patient care. The law requires you to comply with all the sections that apply. So for example, if you're a wholesale operator and you also have a repackaging operation, both apply. However, you are not required to duplicate the requirements. The law also preempts all state and federal drug pedigree laws. There are 15 key activities in FDA's plan, with a period of time for planned implementation by FDA, and where appropriate, stakeholder implementation. The first activity was gathering input from stakeholders, accomplished through public comment periods, as well as a workshop held at FDA this past May. You can find those materials posted on FDA's website, as well as the following publications on guidances for the industry. They'll be reviewed today on both the identification of suspect product and the recently released standards for interoperable exchange of transaction data. FDA has also completed the activity to establish a system or database for third-party logistic and wholesale distributors to report to FDA, and has published a Q&A document for the states. The public database access and licensing information is due to follow by January 1st of 2015. The DSCSA implementation plan has remaining activities planned throughout the 10-year period and will be referred to in the 5 key areas of compliance today. In general, they are comprised of public meetings, pilots or assessments for stakeholder implementation, and the resulting database systems, regulations to be published, as well as further guidance. We will review this timeline as we go through the presentation today. In terms of the 5 key areas of compliance, we begin with the foundational elements and therefore the first requirements enacting in January of 2015. As mentioned earlier, all trading partners are required to comply for products to move throughout the system and be available for patient care. Trading partners must 1, be authorized, 2, verify product, 3, exchange transaction data, 4, mark and scan product at the case and with a 2D data matrix barcode at the sellable level, which will require different scanning technologies for most trading partners, and lastly, to create an electronic and interoperable system to share the data. As there has not been widespread coverage in the supply chain literature on DSCSA, we'll take a moment to review the definitions from the legislation and in particular focus on the dispenser for the first 2 areas of compliance. We're all fairly clear on manufacturers as regulated by FDA. However, repackager, wholesale distributor, and third-party logistics providers accepting or transferring possession of product will be covered as they impact the last 3 areas for compliance today. As a pharmacist, I bring particular attention to the term dispensers as it may be misunderstood. A dispenser is defined as a retail or hospital pharmacy, chain pharmacies under common control, although not engaging in wholesale distribution, those authorized to dispense or administer prescription drug products, their affiliated warehouses and distribution centers under common control, and again, not engaging in wholesale distribution. This does not include dispensing for use in animals or practitioners who prescribe or administer drug product in their professional practice. And we'll come back to that particular exception throughout the areas of compliance. So the first area is authorized trading partners. It's effective January 1st of 2015 for all trading partners selling product to be authorized via either licensing by the state from which the drug is distributed, and if interstate and required by that state, licensed by the state into which the drug is distributed. If the state does not have a licensure requirement, FDA will now license distributors. And in the case of a manufacturer or repackager, they're authorized by having an FDA registration, and in the case of a dispenser, having a valid license under state law. Again, that same practitioner exemption applies. This is not licensed healthcare providers that are prescribing or administering medications in the usual course of their professional practice. We will also cover the definition for distribution in further depth as it applies in compliance areas and for repackagers marking product. Compliance with Area 2 is also effective January 1st, 2015 for verification. All trading partners shall have systems in place to enable compliance with requirements for suspect and illegitimate product determination or responding to a request for verification from another trading partner or FDA. And to note, systems as defined here, may include a secure electronic database developed or operated by another entity. However, the verification requirements still apply. And as you will hear throughout the 5 areas, all transaction and investigation records must be maintained for at least 6 years. So we're going to review the terms in this area as defined by the DSCSA. Illegitimate product is defined as a product where there's credible evidence that it is counterfeit, diverted or stolen, intentionally adulterated, such that it would result in serious health consequences or death, is the subject of a fraudulent transaction, or appears unfit for distribution and likely to result in adverse consequences. A suspect product is defined as a potentially illegitimate product for the requirements just mentioned. Verification or verify is defined in DSCSA as determining whether the product identifier affixed to, imprinted upon, a package, or homogeneous case responds to the standard numerical identifier or SNI, which we'll cover later in Area 4, and the lot number or expiration date assigned to the product by the manufacturer or repackager. We'll cover this verification as a 3-step process. Number 1, quarantine the product in your possession or control in a separate physical area from other products. And this includes any product that will be subsequently received. Investigate to determine whether the product is illegitimate, including a validation and verification step. So those steps entail, number 1, validating the transaction data. This will be done with the manufacturer for the transaction history and transaction information in your possession. We'll discuss both of those pieces in Area 3. However, validating that data has a timeline of no later than 1 business day, not to exceed 48 hours. So there's a short timeline there. Dispensers are given 2 days to allow time to receive back the request for validation. The second piece of the investigation is to verify. This entails verification, and maybe it's been previously referred to as an authentication step. This is the DSCSA product identifier mentioned earlier at the serialized package level. This step enacts in 2017 for manufacturers, 2018 for repackagers, 2019 for wholesalers. Then in 2020, dispensers will verify at the lot level, plus for this suspect product, greater of either 10% or at least 3 serialized packages. The third step for verification is to determine whether the suspect product is illegitimate. And this will be done again with both trading partners and FDA. You need to assist trading partners if that product is not in possession or control, and retain a sample. Also notify FDA and all immediate trading partners that may have received the illegitimate product within 24 hours after determination, and then promptly if that product is not found to be illegitimate. Just to note, dispensers until November of 2017 will be given more time to retrieve documents that were originally provided in paper, and requests will be limited to the previous 6 months. And for recalls, the transaction data can only be requested in the event of a serious adverse consequence. And as mentioned before, there's still that exemption for practitioners. This applies to those trading partners responsible for procurement and not licensed practitioners. We referred earlier to the first of the 15 key activities by FDA, and one was the publication of guidance for industry on suspect product. This should be in all standard operating procedure and training guides. A few things to note in looking for these products: look for new trading partners or sourcing, unsolicited sales offers from an unknown source, sales that are priced low or too good to be true, or purchasing from a source that has a history of problematic histories or transaction data, if there's some misspelled words, incomplete or suspicious transaction data. Second, products that are in low supply or high demand or high value products. These might be related to a public health emergency, been stolen previously, been in the past subject of an illegitimate product notification or a cargo theft alert from FDA. Also packages, either containers, case, or tote that seem suspicious, damaged, altered, missing information or markings. This could be misspellings, something that appears different in the label, color, font size, foreign terms that may appear, something that appears altered or damaged. Also, if there's missing information on the label, such as the RX symbol, strength, unusual odor or color imprint. And lastly, looking for shipping addresses, postmarks, or other information that seems this product came from an unexpected source. This could be foreign language again on the product, if it's transported in a case or tote when you wouldn't expect that, or any lot numbers or expiration dates that don't match the outer container. Now I'll hand off to our colleague Dirk for Compliance Area 3.
Thanks, Chris. One of the most important requirements of the DSCSA is the requirement for the supply chain trading partners to exchange transaction data. A transaction is defined by the DSCSA as a change in ownership, and whenever ownership changes, the seller must provide the buyer with some specific documentation. This is what the DSCSA refers to as product tracing. Starting on January 1st of next year, and for dispensers the date is July 1st, the date the seller must provide the buyer in paper or electronic form in every change of ownership includes the following. Transaction information, otherwise known as TI, is basic data about the drug and the parties involved in the change of ownership. Transaction history, known as TH, is the collection of all TI data that was provided by each previous owner. For most shipments, most manufacturers will not have any TH because the drugs that they make do not have any prior history. A transaction statement, known as TS, is a set of 7 distinct assertions about the veracity of the product in the shipment and the data that describes it. So for the rest of this presentation, when we refer to TI, TH, and TS, this is what we are referring to. We'll take a closer look at each of these in a minute. TI, TH, and TS must be provided next year in paper or electronic form but for manufacturers beginning on November 27, 2017, the data must be provided in electronic form only. The one exception to this is when a manufacturer ships directly to a licensed healthcare practitioner. Here's a list of the data elements that comprise the TI. It includes 3 different types of data, which I have depicted here with different background colors. The first set of data is product master data, which includes the product name, the strength and dosage form, the NDC, and the container size. The lot number is the one production identifier that must be included. Finally, the remaining data elements describe the transaction itself. These include the number of containers, the date of the transaction, the date of the shipment, the business name and address of the person from whom ownership is being transferred, and the business name and address of the person to whom ownership is being transferred. TH, the transaction history, is a statement in paper or electronic form that includes the transaction information, or TI, for each prior transaction going back to the manufacturer of the product. So if we have a drug that has passed through ownership by 2 wholesale distributors and is now being sold to a pharmacy, as shown in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, the TH would include the TI from the 2 previous transactions. That is, the TI from the manufacturer to the first wholesale distributor and the TI from the first wholesale distributor to the second. This way, the pharmacy will receive the product that receives the product will have a record of where the drug has been in the supply chain. TS, the transaction statement, is a statement in paper or electronic form that the entity transferring ownership, that is the seller, makes about the authenticity of the product, the transaction, and the transaction documents. These include that the seller is authorized or licensed. The seller received the product from a person that is authorized. They received a valid TI and TS from the prior owner. They did not knowingly ship a suspect or illegitimate product. They had systems and processes in place to comply with the DSCSA verification requirements that Chris was describing. They did not knowingly provide false transaction information. They did not knowingly alter the transaction history. And in some cases, an indication that the seller purchased the product directly from the manufacturer, exclusive distributor, or a repackager that purchased the drug directly from the manufacturer. This last one only applies to the wholesale distributors and repackagers. So let's put it all together. In this slide, I show a supply chain from manufacturer through 2 wholesale distributors to a pharmacy. On the left margin, I have listed TI, TH, and TS. The animation in this slide will help step through the movement of the product and show how to construct these 3 documents in each case. For the sale from the manufacturer to the first wholesale distributor, the manufacturer has to create the TI and TS, but there would not normally be any TH because there is no prior history for the product they sell. In this example, the documents are in electronic form, so once the manufacturer sends the TI and TH in a single document for each drug in the shipment to Wholesaler 1, they can ship the product. When Wholesaler 1 prepares to ship some of the product to Wholesaler 2, they would need to build their TH from the TI that the manufacturer originally provided them. They would then create their own TI and TS, optionally package it all up into a single document, and send it on to their customer, Wholesaler 2 in this example. In this particular type of transaction, not all of the TI data elements are required, as we will see in the next slide. When Wholesaler 2 prepares to ship some of the product to the pharmacy, they would need to build their TH by combining the TI and TH received from Wholesaler 1. They would then create their own TI and TS, package it all up into a single document, and send it on to the pharmacy. In any of these steps, the documents created and provided to the next owner could be in paper form, or perhaps a secure web portal. But as I said earlier, by late 2017, the manufacturer's data must be in electronic form. The regulations for wholesale distributors must have some extra complexity built into them based on where they originally bought the product. Starting on January 1st, when selling product originally bought directly from the manufacturer's exclusive distributor or a repackager who bought directly from the manufacturer, the wholesale distributor may omit from the TI and TH the lot numbers, the initial transaction date, and the initial shipment date from the manufacturer. But in that case, the TS provided by the wholesaler must state that the product was purchased directly. However, when selling product that was not bought directly, the wholesaler must supply the usual TI, TH, and TS. On the previous slide, the TI that wholesaler number 1 provided to wholesaler number 2 would probably have less information than wholesaler 2 would have needed to provide in their TI. For drop shipments, the facilitating wholesaler is exempt from providing the TI, TH, and TS to the dispenser if the TI, TH, and TS is provided to the dispenser by the party doing the shipping, and the TI and TH contain the contact information of the facilitating wholesaler. Also, starting on November 27, 2019, wholesale distributors may only engage in transactions involving products that are serialized by the manufacturer or repackager and bear the DSCSA product identifier. As you might expect, the DSCSA contains specific requirements around returns. The DSCSA defines returns as providing product to the authorized trading partner from which the product was purchased or received, or to a returns processor or reverse logistics provider. Saleable product is treated differently than non-saleable product. So for saleable returned product, after November of 2017, manufacturers must verify the NDC and serial number on the product before they sell it. Wholesale distributors may accept sellable returns from dispensers without receiving TI, TH, and TS until November of 2019, excuse me, provided there is a written agreement in place. After November 2019, they may accept a saleable return from dispensers only if they were the original source, and they must verify the NDC and serial number before they resell it. For dispensers, after January 1st, they can return saleable product to the original seller without providing TI, TH, and TS, as long as they have that written agreement with them. Repackagers may return sellable product from the beginning without providing the transaction data, as long as they have a written agreement, and after 2018, they must begin to verify the DSCSA product identifier before they resell the product when they receive resaleable returns. But for non-sellable returns, all parties may return product to the manufacturer, repackager, or wholesaler from whom the product was originally purchased without providing TI, TH, and TS. The DSCSA has a good number of exemptions. We've listed some of the product types and situations on this slide where the transaction requirements do not apply. If you think your product or transaction falls into one of these categories, make sure that you carefully read the appropriate section of the law. And now I'll turn it over to Grant Hodgkins. Grant?
Thanks, Dirk. So I know we're running a few minutes late, so I hope everybody can hang in there with us. In this section, we're going to talk about the key requirements for serialized drug product and what this means to the various stakeholders. So first, we need to begin with just a few definitions. You can see them on your screen. I'm not going to read every one of them, but I am going to focus on a couple of these. There is a little bit of a different definition in the DSCSA legislation for some of these terms, and some of them are still a little bit open to interpretation. So for example, in the package, when you hear the word package, it means the smallest individual saleable unit of the product for distribution by a manufacturer or repackager intended for ultimate sale to the dispenser. And so that has been open to a little bit of interpretation. It's not going to be very clear, and it probably won't get cleared up until there's some guidance documents, but that's it. You need to be aware of that. Also, I want to focus on the repackager definition for a moment. A repackager in the DSCSA is someone who relabels or repacks a product or a package for further sale or distributes it without a further transaction. So depending on how strictly this is going to be interpreted and what your physical processes are, this may implicate some additional types of operations if it's strictly applied. So the final one is for 3PLs. There's a little bit of complexity here that's going to have to be worked through by the industry in partnership with the FDA in order to really understand what the requirements are for 3PLs as an entity, but also for the companies that are doing business with that 3PL. Move here to the next slide. Serialized drug products and packaging. So now that we have the basic definitions, let's talk about some of the requirements. So the main requirement in this section of our talk is to mark all the drug packages and the homogeneous cases with the DSCSA product identifier. So we're going to explore the makeup of that DSCSA product identifier in the following slides. This marking has to occur by November 27, 2017 for manufacturers and by November 27, 2018 for repackagers. If you're a repackager, then you have to assign a new product identifier and maintain the linkage between that original product identifier from your original source and your newly assigned product identifier in your local systems. So any drug package requiring this DSCSA product identifier is not required to also carry the FDA's unique device identifier and vice versa. So this is going to apply mostly when you have a drug-device combination product and also to convenience kits. It's going to hinge on how it was registered, basically. And then finally, Any labeling changes that are required to meet DSCSA requirements are an annual reporting element. They're not something that you're going to have to get prior approval or do some additional registrations in order to make that happen. So that's really good news for the industry. So to define this DSCSA product identifier, it's composed of the SNI, which is the Standardized Numeric Identifier, plus the lot, plus the batch identifier, plus an expiry date. The SNI contains the NDC plus a serial number, which is alphanumeric and up to 20 characters in length. So this combination of the NDC and the serial number has to be unique. This SNI was defined previously in FDA guidance from a few years ago, so you can see that in the references in our white paper, which we'll discuss later, so that you can find that. So this DSCSA product identifier must be encoded into the barcode, and it has to be printed in human-readable text. This is accomplished using either GS1 or HIBIC industry standards. So you can see on the screen there's an example of a data matrix with the human-readable text associated with it. All of that information is encoded into that barcode, and that would be in the GS1 system. So the DSCSA product identifier is marked on the drug package itself using this data matrix barcode, and it's also on every homogeneous case where you can use a linear and or a data matrix barcode to achieve that requirement. So the one thing that's a little bit unclear right now about this is there was a rule by the FDA in 2004, the FDA pharmaceutical barcode rule, and how that's going to be reconciled, where it mandated linear barcodes, and now DSCSA has 2D data matrix barcodes. We'll have to work out and see how that plays out. It may be that the barcode rule is modified in some way. It might be remain in place with both requirements, or it might be rescinded. We just don't know. As an example, for vaccines in 2011, there was an exemption process put in place that allowed data matrix in place of the linear barcode to meet certain requirements. So we don't know if some type of a broad exemption like this will be put in place or how that's going to play out. And then finally, for drug products sold in retail channels, it's very likely that commercial pressures will continue to drive the need to have the existing linear barcodes remain in place. So that's a little bit about the DSCSA product identifier. So as we mentioned previously, there's two different approved industry standards for marking these barcodes and the human-readable text, the GS1 systems and the HIBIC systems. We believe that the GS1 system of standards remains the predominant standard for U.S. drug products, and that's for a number of reasons. It's a set of standards that applies for all kinds of supply chain and efficiency operations, including the marking requirements of how do you encode this NDC into a barcode, e-commerce standards like EDI and XML, most notably things like advanced ship notices and purchase orders and acknowledgments that support the exchange of all these types of transactions. And then finally, the EPCIS system, which is the Electronic Product Code Information Services, which is one highly regarded mechanism for potentially achieving the fifth requirement, which is the Enhanced Drug Distribution Security requirements, which take effect in 2023. So there's a couple of key industry-driven guidance documents that are available today to help with your adoption efforts. So HDMA had some recent updates to their DSCSA ASN guidance document, and then GS1 US Healthcare has an update to their pharma traceability guide. Those are both available from those organizations. The HDMA guide really focuses on the EDI 856 advanced ship notice transactions and how to adapt those to carry the relevant information you need to meet January 1st requirements and future requirements. The GS1 guide is more far-reaching, and it delves into all the different areas of the GS1 system of standards that help you meet marking requirements, transaction requirements, and operational efficiency requirements. So now we're going to move to Area 5 and review the Enhanced Drug Distribution Security section of the legislation. So beginning November 27, 2023, all trading partners must exchange the TI and the TS in a secure, interoperable electronic manner based on FDA guidance and standards. So this system will record every transaction between every trading partner at the serial number level, and records have to be maintained for 6 years. The development and deployment of this interoperable electronic system is a significant endeavor for all of our trading partners and for the FDA. But it's our belief that the ongoing operation of this system is arguably the most difficult part of this journey. So, imagine with me for a moment a future state where every transaction of every single individual serialized drug product between every trading partner is now being tracked, the data is being stored, and any error that you have in picking, receiving, invoicing, or any other related process now triggers a transaction failure. And now you have to go identify that failure, investigate it, and reconcile it in order for that product to continue to flow through the supply chain. So just for a moment, just consider the data storage, retrieval, processing, and systems requirements that each trading partner will have to be able to quickly sift through all of this information, find that error, and determine how to address that error. So this represents a daunting challenge to our industry. So let's talk a little bit now about what's being done to help realize this. So there are some key work groups that are working on this. FDA has been partnering with industry, and they'll have to continue over the next 9 years to define how this is all going to work with enough detail to ensure that our drug supply remains uninterrupted. So some of these work groups were formed when Florida and California pedigree legislation came about. Those laws have now been preempted by the DSCSA, and the key groups include RX360 has a work team called the Traceability and Data Exchange Architecture Working Group. GS1 Global Healthcare has a integrated group called Traceability and Healthcare 2, and again through GS1 there's a GSMP event-based traceability mission-specific work group, which is a big mouthful, but their job is to work on the overall EPCIS type event-based traceability. So as I mentioned, one of the most promising approaches appears to be this GS1 EPCIS. It's a set of messaging standards. It was originally developed for the retail sector to manage the vast amount of serialized item data required to support detailed traceability and visibility for RFID-enabled products. RFID-enabled products are, by their nature, individually serialized. So work is in progress now to adapt that mechanism for EPCIS into the healthcare sector. So just so you can see a little bit of this in detail, this slide shows a hypothetical example of such an EPCIS transaction where it displays the who, the what, the when, the where, and the why of a particular transaction. So as you can see, it's a lot of information, it's a lot of complexity, and that has to happen for every serialized product, for every product movement that involves a change in ownership. So this data matrix barcode that we mentioned earlier becomes really critical to quickly capturing the necessary information and enabling it all to happen. It's providing the link between that individual serialized product and then all the rich transaction data that's contained in all these systems that support traceability. So I want you to consider that this happens in the U.S., fills billions of prescriptions every single year. So that's billions of individual serial numbers that are going to be subject to this legislation over time. So although we focused today on the DSCSA legislation, which is a U.S. initiative, it's important for you to consider that there's other jurisdictions with active pharma serialization and marking legislation in play right now. So some of those are summarized on this slide. If you're a global company, you need a strategy and a plan to address not only the U.S. FDA requirements, but also these other global requirements in a holistic and cost-effective manner. So we think it's imperative that you stay informed of all the key global developments and the work groups and their activities so that you've got the latest information to guide your decision making. So we believe that one excellent source of this information is GS1 as a global healthcare public policy work group. If you're a GS1 global healthcare member in good standing, then you can join this initiative, and I would highly recommend that you consider that. And there's a link that we can provide you to get to that. So let's review a little bit about what we learned today. So the DSCSA legislation, as you saw, it's very complex. There's numerous and differing target compliance dates for each trading partner. In this slide, we tried to boil it down and give you some of the most notable dates. So in January 1st, 2015, the authorized trading partner requirements and the verification requirements come into effect. For dispensers, those come into effect in July. For everyone else, it's January 1st. In November 2017, manufacturers are now going to have to mark this DSCSA product identifier onto the drug packages and onto the homogeneous cases, and then there's phased implementation dates for the other trading partners. And then, of course, as I just mentioned, November 27, 2023, that heralds the beginning of our enhanced drug distribution security system that applies to all trading partners, where all the transactions are going to occur at the serialized product level across the entire supply chain. The following is a summary of the key requirements. So I hope that you found our 5 key requirements for compliance a helpful way of breaking down this complex legislation and improving your understanding. Today we covered those key requirements of authorized trading partners, verification processes, exchanging transaction information, serializing drug products, and of course the future state enhanced drug distribution security system. We will have a companion white paper that we're going to post on our website shortly with even more information and analysis. So check back soon, download your copy. We've also recorded this webinar, and it's available for replay on our website in a few days so that you can share it with your colleagues and project team members. So here's some key takeaways from today's webinar for you. The DSCSA affects all trading partners exchanging drug products in the United States. We feel it's really important that you read the definition section, know which requirements apply. Those requirements start in January 2015 and continue through 2023. Keep in mind that whatever you put in place for January 1st, since the timelines were really tight, you may have to go back and revisit in 2015 to improve or streamline your operations. And then finally, it's really important that you stay informed, you know the latest news, you watch for guidance documents, and participate on work groups, stay involved. So USDM and Dirk Rodgers Consulting are happy to partner with you to help you navigate all this myriad of U.S. and global regulations. As Becky mentioned earlier, we provide full-service solutions to meet your global regulations, from consulting, strategy and planning, helping build and execute, validation quality management, And then finally, Dirk's excellent book, The Drug Supply Chain Security Act Explained, is also available and would be highly recommended for you to look at. So time's of the essence, so feel free to contact us anytime, and we're happy to help. So this concludes the information sharing portion of the webinar. So at this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Becky for Q&A, and we really look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant, and well done, team. Good information presented, and the deadline just a few weeks out here, so glad we can offer information and help as necessary. Let's jump right into the questions for our team. The first is from Karen, and she is asking if the manufacturer manufactures a prescription under private label, do we have to include the TH from the manufacturer that the manufacturer sends to us when we sell it to the wholesaler? Let me know if you need that again.
Well, this is Dirk. I can take a stab at that, and then one of the other folks can jump in if they have something to add. I think the term that they used in the question was a little confusing to me. But if they're talking about a contract manufacturer relationship with the NDA holder or ANDA holder, that does not have to appear on the TH. And the reason for that is that since that's the only source of those drugs, and there really isn't in most cases a change of ownership in that case. So if that's what they're describing, then that's the case. But if they're describing another situation which might be considered an exclusive distributor, that's kind of a challenge. The exclusive distributors are mentioned in the law, but they different people interpret how exclusive distributors are handled differently. So you might want to get someone that's either a lawyer involved in trying to help you parse that out, or perhaps ask the FDA in that particular situation.
Thank you, Dirk. Next question is from Shelley. Is there any guidance or thoughts on what the TS should look like? For example, should it list each statement or be a summary statement of compliance? And second part of the question, is a signature required for the TS?
I can answer that too. In fact, the last one, there is no signature requirement, so that's pretty clear. The TS, whether or not it's a summary statement or 7 individual statements, that's another thing that's kind of subject to interpretation. Interestingly, though, HDMA has recommended that people use sort of a summary statement in their EDI ASN guidance. If you're not planning on using EDI ASNs, you may still want to get a hold of their free document that explains their EDI ASN recommendations, because it does include a particular text that is considered a single summary of compliance with the TS requirements. My personal opinion is that it probably does need to be the 7 distinct assertions that are in the law. However, because so many companies are currently planning on following that guidance from HDMA, I suspect that you don't have too much to worry about if you do follow that. What we really are needing here is guidance from the FDA. So if the FDA in the next period of time, let's say the next 6 months, either produces guidance that either accepts the HDMA suggestion or rejects it and proposes a specific text. So watch for that. But until that happens, I think you're probably safe following the HDMA guidance.
Terrific, thank you. Question from Jaime. Will an authorized distributor accept it on the product tracing, or does the new ruling require it must be all the way to the manufacturer?
Well, in fact, I saw that question come in on the chat box, and again, the term authorized distributor, if I take that at face value, yes, authorized distributors must have on their TH on their TH, they must go all the way back to the original manufacturer. So if there's a change of ownership between the manufacturer and the distributor, even if they're authorized, and authorized by the DSCSA means that they are licensed, then they must appear, the manufacturer must appear on that TH. Now, if the person asking the question was wondering about some other scenario, I'm not exactly sure what that might be, but there could be other interpretations of that question, and I guess I'm just not going to go beyond what I just said about what the law considers an authorized distributor.
Thank you, Dirk. A question from Desmond. Will the presentation be available? As Grant mentioned, we are recording this session. It will be posted to the website, which is, of course, usdm.com. Just go to the webinars page, and you'll find this among the 50 or so webinar presentations and educational sessions there across the multiple practices. We do not provide the slide decks individually, but you're certainly welcome to log in and view the information or share with colleagues. Next question is from Martin. We stated in the trading partners definitions that dispenser is defined as having a valid state license. What discussion, clarification, or exemption has been considered for federal dispensing pharmacies that do not have a state license?
Hi, this is Chris. I'll take that. And that's a good point. There are pharmacies that are not licensed by the state. However, we would not expect that to be an exemption from the requirements, much like the states that do not license their wholesalers or 3PLs, a federal license would apply there.
Thank you, Chris. Our next question is from John, asking, would the physician clinic offices in my health system be considered dispensers?
Yes, so physician clinic offices that would be dispensing to patients, they're still a trading partner if they are procuring that medication. So it's the source of procurement that is important and who's responsible for meeting the DSCSA. There are some exceptions for the electronic requirement for a physician's office. However, the purchaser of those products for that physician dispensing would still be required to follow DSCSA requirements.
Thank you, Chris. Next question is from Joe. I have UPC barcode on my drug package today and a linear data bar on the product label. Does DSCSA now also require me to put a data matrix barcode onto one or the other level of packaging? If so, which one? Can I remove either of the linear barcodes?
Hi, Becky. It's Grant. So I'll take that one. So as I mentioned in the presentation, it's a little bit unclear about how this is going to work exactly with the barcode rule remaining intact. I think that at the moment, if you had a drug package that was two levels, you had one level that was, a blister pack, for instance, and going inside of a carton, then the linear would continue to go on the carton that's typically dispensed in a pharmacy, and then probably in addition it's going to take a data matrix on that carton as well. I think there's all kinds of different variants of that solution, and there's all kinds of different situations. I think this is something the FDA is going to have to help clarify for the industry.
Thank you, Grant.
Thoughts about that, or Chris?
I agree.
Very good. Next question from Janice. Are there vendors out there today that sell EPCIS solutions, or is this some future state solution that's not yet defined?
So, Dirk, this is Grant. I'll take a run at it, and you can jump in if you'd like. There are solutions out there that are built upon the EPCIS set of standards, messaging standards. Commercially available, in use, being used today, in real life, in production. You can just do a web search on EPCIS and you'll run across the vendors relatively easily. So this is not vaporware, and it's not something that's completely future state. There are a number of people doing this every day right now, and some of them even with serialized product. So Dirk or Chris, I don't know if you have some expansion to that.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. In fact, most of the vendors out there can handle both EDI and EPCIS. But keep in mind that the limiting factor is going to be in any of the technologies that you select will be whether or not your customer can receive the data in that particular format. So the interoperability that the FDA speaks about in their guidance that was released last week, in their definition, they're talking about between individual trading partners from A to B. They have to be interoperable, meaning they have to agree on a particular format of the data.
Yeah, and therein lies the need for the industry and FDA to partner to define what that interoperability really means. Good. So Becky, what do we have time for one more? Or?
Yes, I think we will, and then we will need to wrap up. Thank you all for hanging in there for this great information. Last question will be from Susan. Since the law allows paper documents until November 2017, why can my wholesaler, what if, I think, my wholesaler customers refuse to accept them?
I can take that. That's a good question. In fact, the law does allow you to provide paper, but you do still have to work with your trading partners just because of technology investments along the way, and particularly wholesale distributors. The larger they are, the more difficult it is for them to deal with paper because they have to keep track of where that paper, where that product is, and the paper that goes with that product, so that all the way through their system at their potentially single receiving facility through their remote distribution centers and then on to the customer. And so that's very difficult to do with paper. So most of the larger wholesale distributors, or all of them, are insisting on electronic from day one, which I know complicates things for manufacturers, but that's just because of the complexity involved in today's modern wholesale distributor. That's really what's necessary.
Thank you so much. And with that, we will wrap it up today. Thank you again for some great questions. And we would like to encourage you to visit the USDM website and find a little more information there around upcoming webinars and events, as well as the recorded sessions of previously presented topics. We do invite you to join the discussion on the USDM group page forum on LinkedIn and stay up to date there with upcoming events and additional presentations. We're very open to feedback, so please let us know if we're on the right track, if this information is useful for you, or if you have suggestions for future presentation topics. Let us know what your pain points are, and we can help you meet them. Thanks again to our very strong presentation team. Well done today in sharing timely and needed information, and thanks everybody for taking the time to join us as we stay at the forefront of compliance. Wish that you all have a wonderful day.